So we are live.
Great. Milos, can we get going? We're on?
Yes, we can get going, yeah.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody, or good evening, depending which country, which continent you're in. We were just huddling a little bit before. Looks like we have about 100 plus minus folks dialed in, which is great to see. We have a great group of folks on the call today, and the idea we wanted to do, and perhaps a bit overdue, given how long we've been all isolated at our own homes predominantly, is to really bring everybody together virtually, and in a lot of ways mimic what we've been doing physically in the past few years since we started the organization, to really hear from the folks from different areas of the world. At this point, I think the panelists, by my count, we have folks that sit in 5 different cities and 3 different countries. So it's truly global conference today. But the idea is to hear from them how they've been dealing with this just unprecedented issue and working through unprecedented times. All our founders and CEOs, so on top of challenging day-to-day work that the founder and CEOs have, obviously there's another layer of complexity here that has been pushed on all of us. The idea is to spend about a half an hour. I will lead a handful of questions that I think probably are on everyone's mind, and we'll give chance to each of the panelists to provide their perspectives, and then we'll try to manage as best as we can the questions that all of you may have. We're going to collate them to the Zoom feature, and then we'll ask in turn for about a half an hour, I believe is the plan. After that, we'll kind of walk through some of the specific logistics of and kind of tactics of making it happen. We'll do a virtual happy hour as well, and Milos and Tiho will help us through that. But with that, let me just dive right in. I know it's late in some of the regions of the world where folks are dialing in from, so I want to be as efficient as productive as possible. Maybe I'll turn it over to the panelists here to give us a quick overview, and I mean really quick. I think most people know you already, but maybe just give us your name, company, what you're doing, where you're based, kind of how many people you're running. So some vitals on your background, just so that people can understand who you are. Tiho, you're first on my screen, so I'll start with you.
All right. Hey everyone, pozdrav. My name is Tiho. I'm one of the folks who was destined to start Serbian Entrepreneurs about 3.5 years ago, along with Brano and a couple of others. I'm currently actually in Toronto, but I live and work in San Francisco. I am one of the founding team at LTSE, and I currently oversee our software business at the long-term stock exchange at LTSE. We have offices in San Francisco, New York, and Belgrade. All in, we're just under 50 people. And this has been a very interesting time to try to launch a new U.S. securities stock exchange, as well as support over 40,000 startups that we have globally using our services or using our tools from formation through growth stage and beyond. So excited to kind of hear from everybody around the world here, some of their learnings and how they're dealing with the situation, and happy to share, the perspective from LTSE.
Great, thank you. Branko next.
Hello, Brano. Branko, Nordeus, based in Belgrade, a bit under 200 people, everybody in Belgrade, 24 nationalities. So I'm doing the brain gain thing, which I recommend with all of my heart. Feels great. I think that's enough for start time. We'll talk.
Great. More. Great, thank you. Danielle, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Danielle Weinblatt. I am based in New York City, although I just changed my background so that I could be back in Belgrade. So don't mean to confuse you. So dobar dan to everyone. I started a company called ConveyIQ. That was about 7.5 years ago. The company was about 50 people when we sold it, of which half of my employees were located in Belgrade, and that was my development team as well as my QA team. We sold the business in 2019 to a company based in San Francisco called Intello, and I am the Chief Product Officer for that organization. And since acquisition, we've actually doubled the size of the office in Serbia. So now we have support, customer success. Obviously, we've expanded the development team. And so it's been an interesting journey. And I have learned a lot of Serbian throughout the years. So you can test me later if you'd like.
And I may add, I met John, the CEO and founder of Intello company that acquired, and he has become a big fan of Serbia as well, to the point that he spent a lot of time with us, helping us with a recent visit of the Serbian team to the Bay Area. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. The reason he loves Serbia now is because I introduced them.
Exactly. Excellent. Love it. Mirjana?
Yes. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Dobro večer svima. Mirjana Prokic, founder of hangAIR Global, based in London. So we are a health tech and well-being startup with a very unique proposition based on my true story life issue, I would say. My background is from marketing and business turnarounds for SMEs, and being in that role for the last 12 years, I experienced terrible burnout through sleep deprivation, jet lag, traveling around the world all the time and experiencing back pain. So that led me to my exciting startup, hangAIR Global, and it's all about very unique smart incliner with the illness app, which is focusing on these two main things, as well as mental health. So actually what we say as a very unique way of thinking for Serbs, I would say, is how to hit three birds with one stone. So that's something that we decided to do, and really tackling three different problems through same unique product. So that's us.
Great. And you're based in London? How many?
Yes. So we are based in London, and we are still in R&D stage, just actually going through first round of investments. Through COVID, actually, we opened the round, which is an unusual time for startups to start the round, but we are seeing some early success, and we have team based in London, and one member of staff is based in Serbia, and one is in Seattle.
Great.
So we kind of spread across as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Mirjana, maybe we'll stay with you as I kind of think through some of the next questions, and we'll work our way back.
Brano, do you want to just introduce Miloš, because he's also...
I'm sorry. Absolutely. Miloš, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Hi, guys. My name is Miloš, and I'm based in New York. I run the New York chapter of Serbian Entrepreneurs, also founder of Bridge, where we're building a product to make it easy for people to help each other more seamless. And then another thing before we get in, I wanted to say, as the panelists are answering their questions, you can put questions in Q&A, throughout the panel, and then we'll pick from those to answer.
Great. Thank you, Miloš. Mirjana, look, you're in a little bit of perhaps unique position in that you started a company in this period, in this time. The product roadmap, the R&D strategy, go-to-market, I'm sure it was all well planned, and then we hit this again unprecedented period. Maybe at a high level and at a kind of summary level, if you can share with the audience kind of what impact did this have? Here we are in end of May. If you think back in kind of January, February time, seems like a different world and different time altogether to today. Kind of what has changed specifically for your business in the last couple of months? How do you think about all those elements?
It's very interesting question, so thank you for that. First thing is that when all this happened, obviously first reaction was, oh, what is going to happen with our startup? And everyone had the same question. But then we as entrepreneurs, I guess we kicked into that mode where we are problem solvers and we look for opportunities, and this is our daily life. So given the fact that with this COVID, lots of companies are now moving or moved already people to work from home, that actually give us a unique position where homes are first of all not equipped with ergonomic, let's say, seats, and doesn't allow, many homes don't allow really a very comfortable way of working, and more people actually are experiencing already problem with the lower back, and being all the time indoors is not really helping, or rarely going out. So there's another impact, which is homeschooling. So lots of parents are staying at home and actually spreading their time very thin on so many different things. And plus, on top of that, is homeschooling. And then that sleeping hour is actually shortened as well, because you try to fit so many things in one space in 24 hours. So that also creates a sleep deprivation problem. And on top of that, mental health and anxiety levels and stress obviously are rising. So actually for us, this is a unique opportunity that we can help many, because our project or other product was mainly focusing, well, we focused on households, but there was always question, yes, but then businesses are obviously much stronger to buy your product, but actually now that story is reversing, where we show our product, they're saying, where can I buy it, when can I buy it, how much does it cost? And actually that how much does it cost doesn't really come across very often, because they just say, if you can solve all these problems for us, I'm in it. So, and last week we had unexpected offer from Saudi government of Saudi Arabia. They just heard about us, and actually they put pre-order for 100 units, and we are still in R&D stage, so we still we are yet to build MVP. So that's like amazing. I never thought about that revenue stream. So that gave us actually more confidence than even before pandemic happened. So I think for us was very well, it's bad timing for everyone, but personally for our own startup, it did help.
It's positive. Great. Thank you. Danielle?
Sorry, I was on mute. So what has changed since COVID in our business? Well, I think, you know, some of the most important things you have to evaluate when you have an organization of our size is how can you forecast likely a revenue drop, given that organizations right now, I mean, we're in the recruitment technology space, so a lot of organizations aren't hiring as much as they were prior to the pandemic. And then on the flip side, there are some industries that are rapidly hiring. So how can you be more strategic about focusing people towards the industries that are growing and trying to position your software that way and reinvent yourself and understand the features, understand the things that are going to make those industries successful. But inevitably, a lot of the companies that you were going after are either not buying software at this time or are waiting to see before they purchase, or you know, deferring payments. So the most important thing for someone who runs a business is to figure out, what can I forecast in terms of my revenue decline, and where do I really believe the world is going to go? It's hard to do, but it's critical. And then figuring out the expense reductions to match that revenue decline. I mean, in order for you to survive and thrive, you need to have enough cash in the bank. That's always the most important thing as an entrepreneur, because cash is king, and I can't reiterate that more than anything else. So you have to have contingency planning. You have to be overly conservative. You know, obviously this environment, they were offering, you know, the PPP loan, which if you're in the United States, and you had a certain number of employees, you could apply for this loan, and the purpose of it would be to keep certain people on payroll that you would have otherwise decided to let go. So being able to figure out, navigate that in addition to cutting expenses has really been top of mind for me during this time frame. And then obviously trying to respond with the product to the industries that are hiring in order to position ourselves for a future that may not be the same as the past. So that's what we've been doing.
Great.
And we also closed down our New York office, which is very interesting. So my work from home situation will clearly be in perpetuity. So I'll have to figure out, per Mirjana's point, I'll have to figure out some better ergonomic situations to deal with that.
There you go. Excellent.
I
Great.
gained new customers. Thank you.
Right. You got it.
Great. Branko, why don't we turn it over to you?
So we make games, and we own end-to-end our business model. So we're business to consumers, we're independent. So that makes us belong to a smaller group of companies whose business model and demand for services wasn't really disrupted by the COVID situation. Actually, demand went up.
I believe it. Yep.
Yeah. So in that sense, for us, the biggest change was preparing for this, because we prepared upfront. As soon as virus hit Italy, our people team started, building everything and preparing for the imminent, working from home and lockdowns and all of that. So what changed is that I'm still at home, even though the country opened up. But I'm and the entire company believes that we should be careful for a few more weeks. So that was the biggest change, the environment, and obviously like these 2 weeks transitioning and making sure everybody's safe, healthy, sane, helping the parents, elderly community, and all of that. The obvious downside for me, if this thing continues for 9, 12, 18 months, the most obvious downside is that to create something new and solve complex problems, collaboration is the key, and the team dynamics and chemistry is very important. And working from home, especially over a long period of time, the already hard thing of creating new and solving complex problems becomes even harder. So that's something that I think a lot about, and I really, really hope this goes away soon. If we are to create some cool new stuff, we'll see. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Tiho, why don't we turn it over to you?
Yeah, so the name of our company is the Long-Term Stock Exchange, and this was going to be a long-term project indeed. And we ended up raising our first money over 4 years ago, and we were actually slated to open up the newest U.S. security stock change several Fridays ago at the end of April. And due to COVID and due to how our member firms were impacted and how difficult it is to actually open up an exchange while working from home, we actually had to delay that. And so we're figuring out what that means for our member firms, what that means for the US security markets and how we join that. So that is like one big impact that we directly had. Then we also have, we're serving thousands of startups from formation stage through growth and as they prep to go public. And obviously some of the startups are really hard impacted, especially the ones whose business model was completely disrupted by COVID, or the ones that did not maybe have, like Danielle was talking about cash being the king, the ones that did not have the runway and were depending on maybe some external injection of capital, or otherwise were not able to get the cash in that they needed. So we saw a big contraction in some of the new signups for startups because new startups are not necessarily being formed at the same rate. And also, like Branko maybe noticed with some of the, uptick in the demand, some of the tools that we offer around cash management, and we saw some of the biggest months ever in terms of usage, in terms of startup usage acquisition as well. So definitely a mixed bag of what this means, and we're feeling it from our startups around the world, how they're impacted. And then in a kind of more company specific, given that we have staff in multiple countries, and given that we have staff in multiple states in the US, we all went to work from home. That was like a really big transition. Luckily, we were already a remote working company, or we were better prepared for that than most others, but it was still a big impact, and a number of folks who are critical for us to operate the business are having to also now take care of their small kids or elderly, or otherwise are being disproportionately impacted by COVID, and that has taken an adjustment as well. So we had to kind of adjust how much work we can expect to do in the short run, and that has been that's taken us over a month to actually become realistic about the amount of work we can sustain in this environment for a longer period of time.
That's great. That's really interesting. Milos, anything from your side to add?
Well, no, from my side, I mean, we're still in early startup phase, so we're more focused on the marketing side, right? And like using this environment and this mentality of people, the way it shifted, and see if we can use that to kind of launch our products.
Great. So I think I think we all are in this new world, and there's potentially, and certainly in my case, this realization that we're in a new world for time being here. Seems like all the CEOs, all the panelists here have taken certain measures to ensure at a minimum survival, if not thriving, of the company going out. But you also are a leader of men and women in your organizations. Can you maybe share some things that you're specifically focused on as you think about continued success of your businesses in this new world? New challenges and new opportunities, right? Working remotely, not being able to see folks. Maybe it's taking care of the community, major customers. We talk how cash is important, but maybe I'll go again the other way. Tiho, for you, kind of what are some of the key areas, and just spend maybe just a minute that you are specifically focused on, that you think are critical beyond the obvious, right? Making sure that you are able to sell.
So a lot of typical advice, especially in this situation, and if you go back to, for example, 2008 and the famous Sequoia deck that was circulated around, is about preserving the cash, right? Cash is king. 18 to 24 months of runway, all of those things are really, really important. If you don't have that, kind of like you got to focus on that first. Now, as a business, we were fortunate to raise, enough money last year to sustain us for multiple years. So we don't have to, worry about that sort of runway extension like most other startups have to worry about. But as I just explained previously, our business model, in the short run experienced a really big impact because we were not able to open up the business as we wanted to open it up. And kind of being true to our name, figuring out like how are we going to do this in the long run. We really very quickly, once we realized this was not going to be just a couple of weeks thing, once we started seeing from our, vendors, how they were being impacted, once we started seeing from some of the member firms, like for example, some of the Wall Street firms were like one of the last ones to actually go to work from home in New York. We realized how difficult it was for them to transition to work from home. We immediately started to adopt, we then internally, as well as with our vendors, starting to adopt the people first strategy to ensure that one, kind of the Maslow hierarchy, right? But like starting with our internal team first and foremost, and then with our most important vendors and partners, making sure that like we are able to sustain and last through this. And if for whatever reason people can't show up for work the way they would want to, or the way they're expected, that we be realistic about that, and that we make make appropriate adjustments, which meant in some cases to kind of, slow down or shut down certain projects, or in others meant that, we had to work with people to be able to enact a long-term family leave policy, right? And so those are some of the things that, like, I think most startups tend to not necessarily ignore, but get to a bit too late at the expense of burning people out, at the expense of burning out partnerships. And again, we were fortunate to be in a position where we have plenty of runway. We don't have to worry about those things right now. So we could really focus on, like, are our people all right? Are our vendors, are our partners all right? How do we do this the right way so we preserve the relationship that we have for the long run, not just for the next couple of weeks, for the next couple of months while everybody's suffering?
Great, thank you. Branko, off to you.
So yeah, I second everything that Tiho said, and I think there is a big opportunity in trying to assume and guess how the future is going to look like. And for me, the first thing to tackle is to understand how we can, while staying safe and sane, because mental health is, I think, bigger of a challenge now than the physical bit. So understand how we can also continue to create value, and just like find a way to stay effective and efficient and impactful and all of that, given again the circumstances, especially if they go for a longer period of time. I believe that those that are able to adapt to that, for example, hiring, like how do you hire without like bringing person on site for 2 days of interviews? I don't know how to do that. Like all of my Nordeus career, I would bring everybody for 2 days to the office and we would just like spend time with them. Now we need a new paradigm and yada, yada, yada. So I think there is an opportunity to solve for that sooner than later.
That's great. Well, Danielle may have something to say about the opportunity to hire and use software, so maybe I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I was about to say to Branko, the first product I brought to market was the digital interviewing software to screen candidates fast and remotely. So, in many ways it could be helpful. And I had foreshadowed, I guess, a lot of this trend, interestingly enough. My thoughts on people strategy, I guess it's a little bit different. I think a lot of the companies are doing the right things with, supporting their team members who are remote, enabling, work from home, assuring people that they won't even have to go back into the offices if they don't feel safe to do so. But, I think it needs to be a little bit deeper than what organizations are doing. What people need right now is authenticity. They need to be spoken to very plainly, very simply, and they need positivity and hope. And so some of the things that we've done inside of Intello has been, making sure that we always turn the camera on if we're having a one-on-one with someone, or making sure that meetings that aren't above 10 people, that everybody puts their camera on so you can see other people's faces. We don't realize, because a lot of us are at homes with our families, but there are younger employees in our organizations that may be living alone, or they may just have a roommate and it may be an awkward situation. So being able to actually see someone's face and see their reaction enables you to stay connected. We've increased the frequency of our monthly town halls. They obviously used to be once a month. Now they're once every 2 weeks. And then what I think is important is using those as a forum to communicate to your employees that it's all going to be okay. That, this is not going to last for an extended duration, and that on the other side of it, there's going to be a lot of positives for them and for the organization. And so those are some of the things that I'm trying to do with my team and with other people inside the company.
That's great. Mirjana, off to you. Some question, how you deal, again, a little bit of a unique position of your perhaps the earliest stage here, still in R&D, What are some of the things that you're specifically focused in a period and going forward?
Yeah, this is unique opportunity, as we said, a unique situation that we are all facing equally across the world. And this puts us in that, as I just said, equal state where there is no anymore big difference between, people with money going through something or people without money going through something else. Actually, we all go through it. Now, in terms of when we bring that into the business as teams and as people of different backgrounds, different life circumstances, etc., I think that the way how, first of all, how we do lots of engagement, social engagements, because I think old-fashioned way of thinking that this is the business, this is a 9-to-5 job, and I actually have one face when I am in front of my co-workers, and then after 5 o'clock I have different face, this is for my family. I think this is a great opportunity to drop that and be real in every situation. And that's what we do. So we do walk and talk, let's say. We do sometimes cook dinners together. Children of our co-workers are also present, and it's family, it's community. And I think this is a unique situation to, as I said, change something that used to be framed for many, many decades due to, wherever that 9-to-5 was introduced. Now we realize that everything is possible, even through digital. And in terms of face-to-face, yes, I mean, I don't sit with you right now. We are all in different places, but actually I can see face expression. I can feel how, we all kind of bond together here. And there is a lot of humanity even through digital. So interactions. So that's what we do. But personally, in terms of business focus right now, apart from bonding even on deeper levels as a co-workers, we are focusing on bonding with our potential consumers as well. So we are preparing now a crowdfunding campaign as well. In advance of that, we are preparing more communication in terms of how to engage with our potential clients and customers, how to actually get to them, because now everyone have more time in front of their screens. I mean, number of hours spent in front of the screens, went through the roof nowadays, because we are all just doing this. And this is a great opportunity for many brands, for many businesses. Early stage, later stage, doesn't really matter, because if you tune your marketing approach that doesn't promote you as a brand, but actually talk about problems that your potential customer, your community that you're targeting experiences in such a subtle way, they will come to you. So that's what we are doing right now. Great.
Thank you, Mirjana. We're running towards the end of our time. I appreciate you all sharing perspectives. We have a handful of questions already from the audience, so I'll dig right in, and I think all are absolutely great and relevant here. The first one is from Lena, and it deals with a question of kind of new normal, right? Does the remote working now become a reality? And I do personally believe that the pandemic has accelerated some of the trends that we've already seen happen over the past year or two. You might have seen the news yesterday or the day before that Twitter, for example, has announced publicly that stay at home and working from home for the employees will be forever if they choose to do so. So that trend, I think, is going to continue. How do you see remote working from your perspective, from your business, both in terms of lowering costs, obviously, if you don't have to pay high real estate in Midtown New York, but also from the access to intellectual capital perspective. Our organization, as you all know, one of the kind of two major tenets is to get access to some of the Serbian intellectual capital as well. So would be curious to kind of hear your perspective, how you see this playing out in the next 3 to 4 years. Maybe over to you, Danielle.
Sure. So I think despite what many people think about work from home being perhaps the new normal, or that being the most desirable way to work, I think, all of us being home, some of us with children, homeschooling, and not being in the perfect setup, I think it makes us realize that a lot of us want to go into the office. I don't think I believe that I'm the only person who really enjoyed interacting with my colleagues, whiteboarding, seeing them, being able to engage with them directly. So my perspective, although some people may disagree, is that I think working inside an office, collaborating with your colleagues is going to return eventually. What markets have shown, what I think this pandemic will show, is that people really do have short-term memories. I think for the next year or so, maybe until clearly we find a vaccine, I think the rules may change. People may stagger shifts, like when they go into the office. I do think that work from home will not be something that's looked down upon. I think if someone says, hey, I can't make it into the office today, I'm going to work from home, I do think that that's going to be fully acceptable, and people know that it can work since businesses are still thriving in this environment. But interestingly enough, I don't think offices are going away. I think that a lot of people are going to want to go back. I mean, frankly, not just walk back to the office, but in my case, run back to the office so I can engage with people, start traveling again, meeting customers. I think that's one of the reasons, we love work, or we love what we do. If we're passionate about it, we want to be around other people that are as well. But perhaps we'll be around people with masks on.
Yeah. Indeed. Branko, why don't I turn it over to you? How do you, you obviously have taken a view to stay at home for a little bit longer than what the government has mandated, but any views from the longer term perspective, where are we going to end up?
So I'm pretty aligned with what Daniela said. The only thing I would add, or maybe simplify, I think it's a very complex, question, and we're going to learn a lot over the next period of time. But if I were to simplify what I believe is going to happen, there will be, an angle coming from CFO and these people that create value by saving money, and then there's going to be the actual creators, innovators, people that make money by making stuff, right? And there's going to be a conflict because I've talked to a lot of friends of mine who are executives of major big companies, the companies, and there is a very favorable view of saving tens of millions of dollars on offices, catering, services, perks, and all of that. That's it's very appealing. However, on the other end, like I've lived through this for 2 months now, and I cannot wait to get back to the office where everybody's in without masks, where we can eat together, joke together, but like equally important, if not more, just like solve some of the most complex problems you can imagine in the world of our industry, with these brilliant, friendly, lovely people that I like get energy from, and vice versa. So maybe it's going to be sector by sector, industry by industry, leadership team by leadership team. Is your CEO ex-CFO, or your CEO is an ex-engineer like I am? So right. We'll see. Yeah.
Very interesting. Tiho, your perspective?
I think the work from home is now becoming more normalized for big companies. It used to be something that was like an odd thing to do. And there's only a handful of, unicorn companies like maybe GitLab who were remote first or remote exclusively. And I think what's going to happen, we're going to see more of that. But then, culture stems from the top in companies and startups, and folks like Branko Branko previously at one of our meetups talked about how maybe they had multiple offices and then they decided to, you know what, we should have just a single office, everybody in Belgrade, everybody collaborating. And that's very important to their culture. So I think for startups, for companies that have that sort of collaborative in-person culture and all that, like, of course, they'll want to go back to the office. For teams, companies, cultures where, remote is encouraged or even preferred, I think they're going to see this as a great excuse or as an opportunity to finally lean into kind of what they wanted to do, but now they have a really good kind of, favorable conditions to actually go and fully embrace that and fully go remote. So I think we're gonna establish a couple of, things that are going to become more normal versus the, everybody in the downtown SF or New York going into the office. And I do think that is going to be readjusted. I think it's going to make it more equitable for founders and for startups around the world, that people are going to realize that you actually don't need to go on Sand Hill Road. You can do, pitches via Zoom, and that you don't necessarily have to, buy the most expensive commercial real estate in the world to have a successful office.
Great, thank you. Mirjana, back to you. We had a couple of questions around fundraising, climate and process, and you obviously mentioned you were fortunate position to get some preemptive offers for some of the early products. But given you're in the market now, what are you seeing as you talk to investors, specifically in the UK where you are? Then I'll share some perspective from my end as well, as I think about my own portfolio and what we are doing from our fund's perspective.
Well, it's an interesting time. First reaction from all investors was, hold the horses, don't invest, wait. Then second reaction obviously was, now let's just move all money into our established businesses or startups that we are supporting and help them propel even further, and don't invest into new ones. Then there is another one. Actually, we still have money. There are still prospectful businesses out there that we could invest in. But then angels are there. That, there is all about, in UK, we are fortunate to have those EAS and SEAS schemes, which help investors to minimize their risk in exchange for reducing actually their tax bill. So if startup has a pre-approved SEAS or EAS scheme, then that puts a startup in a very good position where angels actually can benefit a lot and have very minimal risk. So it's really a mix of many different, situations. And also crowdfunding is another source that is always good to go. So we decided to spread ourselves and actually implement 2-3 different strategies, where we also open our funding round to friends and family and our immediate network, because this SEIS and EIS scheme helps them to minimize their risk if they want to invest into something that is very promising. Then we also said, okay, but there are other people who are also interested. So crowdfunding is a great tool. And if you do campaign very well, you can reach many people that you otherwise can't. Use our social media network. So LinkedIn is an amazing place where you can interact with many people. And obviously press is another one that opens the doors to other aspects. And share and spread the word to many angel networks that we have, not only in UK, but everywhere else. So there are ways, money is around. It's all about finding it, and it's all about talking to many people, or network is the key. So we are fortunate to have really strong network. But again, we always look for other people who can help us to propel. So there are ways.
Great, thank you. Quickly from my perspective, and Tiho reminded me that I introduced myself for folks that I haven't met or haven't met me. So I run an investment fund, a venture fund, affiliated by high net worth family here in Silicon Valley. Stage agnostic, we invest early and late, and fairly industry agnostic as well. of a portfolio of just about 30 companies that we invested over the past 5 years or so since I joined and founded the fund. To answer the specific question that I'm sure it's on top of mind of a lot of folks here that have been in a capital raising mode or thinking about it, echoing some of the Mirjana's perspectives for Silicon Valley specifically, and perhaps US more broadly, it's been a bit of a nuclear winter here in terms of new capital raising. When I say new, I don't mean the raises that have been announced over the past few months. Those are generally raises that have been done for a while and have just been announced, in this period. The most, if not all, of the venture investors have been pencils down, including us, after the stay in place, stay in shelter, and stay in place order. The focus up to about a week or 2 weeks ago has been on existing portfolios. We've been all in a bit of a triage mode, getting on board calls or Zoom calls, understanding where the companies are in their stages, how much room to run, zero revenue assumptions, right? Because, there's a lot of uncertainty going out. So that for most investors, that period and that phase is largely done. And we all have pretty good understanding of where our portfolios are in specific companies, which one we double backed, which one we added to, and which one we are kind of monitoring closely. There's been increasing traffic of pitches coming across investors' desk over the past week or two. There's definitely increased activity. From a macro perspective, there's a lot of dry powder. Some of these funds have raised significant amount of capital over the past 6 to 12 months that is not being deployed. So both from the supply and demand perspective, there is a kind of pent-up pressure to kind of break this bottleneck of low activity, because investors like myself, we get paid to do deals, right? We don't get paid to babysit somebody else's money. Now, having said that, it is very difficult to actually invest in anything new. But what I mean by that, if I personally have not met a company, have not spent time with the management, understand what the business is, it is very difficult to make a bet, specifically significant bet, on somebody you haven't had a chance to sit down, break bread, right? Have a coffee, see people in the eye, and understand who they are. Because at the end of the day, investors, specifically on the earlier stage, becomes even more relevant. You're investing in people, and you can only get so much from a Zoom conference. So we haven't done a deal in the past 2 months. We did just one just before we stayed in place, and the deal got announced last week. But we are all actively thinking about, hey, what does the world look like as we go back to work? What does that actually mean? Do you go and meet somebody and you're on the opposite side of a conference room with masks on? Not ideal, but it's certainly better than Zoom, right? So I do think, and we instructed a lot of our companies, that the summer, meaning July and August, that historically has been slower month in the US and probably in Europe as well, as people take vacations off. My sense is that July and August are going to be very, very busy with capital raising. So for those who are thinking about going to market, get your pitch books ready, make sure you have some introductory calls with friendly faces, Zoom conferences to kind of review and preview the opportunity, because again, July and August and then into the fall is going to be very, very busy, and there's a lot of capital that's been sitting on the sidelines. Tiho, you obviously have multiple hats where you have a little bit of a investing background as well in doing that. Anything else to share for the folks?
Yeah, I think that there are the trends that I could just really quickly summarize is that we see some businesses getting kind of really favorable valuations now because of the situation, because they are dealing with remote work or like something very specific to what the society is experiencing right now. or just biotech in general and things like that tend to be more interesting. But there is a shave going on in terms of valuations for anywhere else. And so typical advice is right now, if you don't have to raise, like just wait out, as Brano was saying, July, August might probably be a lot better if you don't have to raise right now, because you're taking a 30 to 50% dilution at the moment. That's kind of like what the surveys are showing. And I think it also differs from what Brano was saying, like if you're going back to your existing investors or folks that you already have a working relationship with, or if those are the net new relationships. I think the net new relationships are really hard to build under their circumstances, as Brano was explaining. I do think that there's going to be an increase in the number of investors, VCs, who are taking kind of a numbers approach. We've seen those experiments in the last several years in the Bay Area, and I think that's going to be, we're going to see a bit more of that, which I think is going to be a bit new. Meaning they're going to invest purely based on metrics.
Yep, great. Maybe I'll ask last question to Branko that just came out, specific to the Serbian community in a Serbian IT ecosystem, coming from Marco. And I'm not 100% sure kind of this test mentioned, but essentially the question is, is there a negative impact to the local IT community in Serbia due to test samostalnosti? There's I guess a law that is introduced in Serbia, to the extent you're familiar with it or know what it is, and you can share some perspective how that translates into the IT community locally, specifically in Serbia. I think that would be great for folks.
So I think that's like part of the new taxation changes, where So there is it's a controversial topic because again, I have limited exposure to it. So there seems to be a number of people who are working independently for foreign companies without the office in Serbia, and then the way you tax that wasn't really regulated, I think, and now the government is trying to regulate it. Meaning, whenever the government tries to regulate tax, you usually pay more tax.
More. Yes.
On the other hand, regulating, things that are not regulated has a lot of benefits. So I'm not an expert in how does that impact the industry. What I do know is that in an ideal world, so I know what the ideal is. Like in an ideal world, in Belgrade, Novi Sad, Niš, etc., we would have global companies that create IP and own that IP and monetize that IP from around the world, which is what I do. And when you do that, you can pay taxes. Taxes are not the problem if you do that.
Right.
What's not ideal is having a large number of cheap labor workers that are essentially creating value by being able to offer their services cheaper than the cheapest in the world. So while I understand, in a moment that is a good thing, it's better if people have jobs. It's much better if you can create value than not. But again, longer term, I personally would just love if we transition to the model of creating a lot of value.
Yeah, higher value add.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, that makes sense. So we're coming to the end here. I wanted to first thank everybody for dialing in and jumping on, and specifically the panelists for sharing your time as well as perspectives and insights. Any other closing? Just wanted to turn it over to anyone who'd like to share any last perspectives, and then we'll go into, maybe I'll turn it over to Milos after that to kind of help us direct us to the virtual networking to those that are interesting. Tiho?
Yeah, not specifically on the topic, but I encourage everybody to email Milos or Petar or myself with feedback around this format, because this is the first time we've ever tried this sort of a format. And if people liked it, we can try it. We can try it again. There have been a bunch of ideas about maybe doing virtual startup pitches or virtual startup kind of workshops. And then also there are 2 sessions here, the one that we just did with the panel, and then there is the virtual meeting room or the virtual networking, which Milos or Petar are going to explain shortly. So I just wanted to say that, with, switching off the topic real quick, but let us know if this is useful to, we had, I think, 75 people at one point joining. So if this is a really good use of time, then we could do it again. Otherwise, happy not to waste anybody's time.
I have some parting words. So stay safe, stay inside, stay positive. Some of the greatest businesses were built in.
Please, go ahead, Danielle.
Oh, yeah. So I said, stay safe, stay inside, stay positive. Some of the greatest businesses in the world were built during uncertain, difficult times, and don't let that break your spirit. Srećno. To je to.
Thank you, hvala.
Hvala, nemen ćemo. Ciao.
Yeah, I would just like to say, my name is Peter. I lead a chapter, Serbian entrepreneurs chapter in London, and I would like to invite you to virtual networking. And if you can see a link in the chat, there is a live Remo link. Please come join us. You can also talk to all the speakers and panelists who will have their own table there. So idea is to, for next half an hour, potentially kind of meet in person virtually. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for dialing in. Well, with that, I will, unless anybody else, anything else. Branko, anything from you?
Thanks for the invite. Great to meet you guys.
Stay safe, everybody, in your respective cities, towns, and in countries. And look, hopefully this is behind us, and we look at this time fondly some way. I know my kids are enjoying it more than they probably should, but they like playing with each other and not going to school. So thank you all for dialing in, and for those that I'll see in the virtual networking, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Hvala.
Yes, so we'll be ending this broadcast and then see you everyone on this link that's in the chat. It's also on the invite, so you can join through there.